Evelyn Adewale stood frozen in the doorway of her husband's high-tech study, her long, dark, abundant curls shimmering under the recessed lighting. Her phone trembled in her hand, the screen still glowing with the messages she'd just read. Messages between Yoon Ji-hoon and her stepsister, Go Eun-ju. The details were a venomous script: the affair, the calculated plan, the pregnancy, and the cruel, chilling question, how long? Evelyn's curvy figure felt suddenly heavy, rooted to the spot. Her voice, when it came, was steady, a low, smooth alto, though her entire world, her meticulously built life and soul, was collapsing beneath the weight of betrayal. Yoon Ji-hoon didn't even flinch. He simply poured another glass of premium scotch, his back still turned to her, his posture radiating indifference. "Does it matter?" he finally drawled, the Korean perfectly enunciated, yet dismissive. 3 years. 3 years of marriage to Yoon Ji-hoon, the polished, ambitious heir to the monumental Yoon Group, one of South Korea's most influential tech conglomerates. 3 years of enduring his mother, Kim Ji-suk's, cold, calculating cruelty, a matriarch whose gaze could freeze water. 3 years of building a life she foolishly believed was real, secure within the modern glass tower of the Yoon world. It had all been a lie. But to truly understand the depth of this deceit, we must go back to the beginning. Evelyn Adewale had always been brilliant. At 28, she was already a prodigy in the competitive Seoul tech scene, making waves as a leading software developer and systems architect. Her designs were not just code, they were elegant, sustainable solutions that merged cutting-edge AI with user-centric interface design. She had met Yoon Ji-hoon at a high-profile launch party for a new virtual reality platform. He was charming, aggressively ambitious, and seemed genuinely captivated by her work. Her innovative approach was a perfect contrast to the Yoon Group's often conventional legacy systems. Their courtship was a whirlwind set against the glittering backdrop of Gangnam and the Han River. Within a year, they were married in a lavish, headline-making ceremony that merged African and Korean traditions, a spectacle chronicled in every business and society journal in the nation. But the warning signs, in retrospect, were as clear as the high-definition screen of her latest project. She should have noticed how Kim Ji-suk, Ji-hoon's mother, and the reigning queen of the Yoon dynasty, watched her with eyes like chipped ice during the wedding toasts. How Ji-suk's lips thinned into a disapproving, almost contemptuous line every time Evelyn spoke about her independent tech projects. "A Yoon wife has responsibilities," Evelyn SSI. Kim Ji-suk had told her, the words delivered with surgical precision at their first family dinner after the honeymoon. "Your little hobby, no matter how brilliant, will have to take a back seat to more important matters. Specifically, producing an heir." Evelyn had initially laughed, believing it a tasteless joke about old money tradition. It was not. For the first 2 years, she fought to balance her life. Her career was thriving. She had just secured a major, multi-million-dollar contract to design the operating system for a massive smart city project in Busan. But Ji-hoon was changing. The warm, supportive man she'd married was becoming increasingly distant, his admiration replaced by thinly veiled criticism. The real, devastating breaking point arrived 3 months ago. Evelyn was working late in her home office, a sleek space overlooking the city, when Ji-hoon stormed in, his face flushed with an ugly, proprietorial anger. "We need to talk now," he bit out, slamming the door behind him. She looked up from the glowing schematics on her massive monitor, concern tightening her brow. "What is it, Ji-hoon? What's wrong?" "My mother is right. This isn't working." He gestured dismissively at the complex algorithms filling her screen. "You're always working. We've been married 3 years, Evelyn. 3 years, and you're still more interested in building systems than in building our family." A familiar, nauseating knot tightened in Evelyn's stomach. They had navigated this conversation before, but never with this brutal edge of hostility. "Ji-hoon, we agreed we would wait until I finish the Busan Smart City core. We have time." "No," he cut her off, the sound sharp as broken glass. "We don't. I want you to quit. Resign immediately. Focus on what truly matters, on giving my family, the Yoon Group, an heir." Evelyn rose slowly from her chair, her back straight, her voice carefully regulated. I am not quitting my career. We can start a family, and I can still work. Plenty of women manage both. I don't care about other women. Ji-hoon snapped, his jaw rigid. I care about my wife fulfilling her obligations. Her duty. The word obligations hit her with the force of a physical slap, burning away the last vestiges of her gentle nature. Is that what I am to you? An obligation? A vessel for your legacy. Ji-hoon ran a frustrated hand through his perfectly styled hair. You know what I mean. Look, maybe there's a problem. Maybe you should see a doctor. Get tested. Rule out anything that might be. Evelyn went absolutely still. I've already been tested, Ji-hoon. After my annual physical last month, everything was confirmed to be perfectly fine. She paused, deliberately choosing words she knew would pierce his arrogance. Perhaps you should get tested too, just to rule out that you might be the problem. She didn't see it coming. Ji-hoon moved with a sudden, uncontrolled violence she had never witnessed. His hand connected sharply with her shoulder, shoving her backward with brutal force. She stumbled, catching herself against the edge of her expensive, ergonomic desk, papers scattering, one monitor wobbling perilously. Don't you dare, he hissed, his face contorted with pure, incandescent rage. Don't you dare suggest that I could be the failure here. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, terrified rhythm. She had never known this man. She had never imagined he was capable of violence. Get out, she whispered, the words trembling with shock. Get out of my office, now. He left, slamming the heavy door so hard the glass panes rattled in their frames. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay in their immense, cold bed alone, staring up at the intricate recessed lighting of their bedroom ceiling, wondering how a marriage built on mutual respect for their careers had deteriorated into this poisonous hostility. Ji-hoon didn't come home. She tried to rationalize it, telling herself he was at his club, cooling off, that they would talk in the morning and somehow salvage the wreckage. But a persistent, sickening suspicion gnawed at her, a cold, hard premonition she refused to ignore. At 2 a.m., she gave in to the impulse. She rose, her body moving with a deliberate, tense silence, and retrieved Ji-hoon's personal tablet from his nightstand. The one he used for personal correspondence, the one she knew he used for affairs of the heart. She knew his simple 4-digit password. He had never bothered to hide it from her. What she found made her blood run colder than the Seoul winter air. Messages. Hundreds of them. Between Yoon Ji-hoon and Go Eun-ju, her stepsister. Eun-ju, the woman who had always been consumed by a venomous, simmering jealousy of Evelyn's achievements and her life. Eun-ju, who had smiled with deceptive sweetness at their wedding, all the while plotting this very betrayal. The correspondence stretched back months. Flirtations that curdled Evelyn's stomach, explicit photos that blurred the edges of her vision, and declarations of a manufactured, convenient love. But it was the most recent, time-stamped conversation that truly eviscerated her. Ji-hoon, she's getting suspicious. She mentioned the doctor again. Eun-ju, then we need to move faster. Mother promised me, once you confirm the pregnancy, she'll make sure the divorce is swift and brutal. You will be the new Mrs. Yoon. Ji-hoon, Kim Ji-suk has already drafted the announcement. Once you confirm the pregnancy, we'll humiliate Evelyn. Make sure everyone knows she failed the Yoon group as a wife and as a woman. Eun-ju, I can't wait to see her face when she realizes she's been replaced by her own stepsister. She'll lose everything. Ji-hoon, stepsister, and she was never going to be enough. Mother knew that from the beginning. You're everything she wanted, fertile, obedient, and without the distracting ambition that made Evelyn so difficult. Evelyn's hands shook violently as she absorbed the text. The affair was repulsive, but this was a calculated, orchestrated scheme, not just by Ji-hoon, but by Kim Ji-suk herself. Her mother-in-law had been plotting to systematically replace her from the day Evelyn first walked into the Yoon Tower. Moving mechanically, her mind oddly detached even as hot, silent tears streamed down her cheeks, Evelyn took screenshots of everything. Then she carefully closed the tablet, replacing it exactly where she had found it. She straightened her spine, walked downstairs, and moved through the silent, enormous house toward Ji-hoon's study. He was there, sitting behind his custom mahogany desk, a drink in hand, as if anticipating, even welcoming, this final confrontation. "How long?" Her voice was eerily steady, the emotional devastation having given way to a cold, hard fury. Ji-hoon swirled his scotch, the amber liquid catching the light, his expression one of almost bored resignation. "Does it matter?" "Answer the question," Evelyn commanded, the low timbre of her voice filling the sterile air. He finally turned to face her, and in his eyes, there was no sign of remorse, no sliver of regret. Only a chilling, rational calculation that confirmed she had never truly known the man she married. 6 months. Since right after you won that Busan contract. Mother said it was time to make a change. Your focus was entirely in the wrong direction. So you found Goonju. She found us, actually, Ji-hoon corrected with a slight, arrogant tilt of his head. Reached out to Mother directly. Said she had always known you didn't deserve what you had, that she could be a better wife, a more suitable daughter-in-law. Turns out, she was right. He took a slow, deliberate sip of his drink, his gaze never leaving Evelyn's. She's pregnant, Evelyn. 3 months along, Evelyn whispered, the information confirming the final destruction of her reality. Kim Ji-suk is thrilled. Finally, a real Yoon. From someone worthy of the name and the responsibility. Evelyn felt the last piece of her youthful naivety shatter. She was not broken. She was forged anew in the fire of this betrayal. "I want a divorce." Ji-hoon laughed, a low, vicious sound that echoed in the luxurious study. "Of course you do. And you'll get one, but not before we ensure everyone knows why. That you're inadequate. That you failed to prioritize your duty." He leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk. "The prenuptial agreement you signed ensures you'll leave with exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing. Our Yoon Group lawyers made absolutely certain of that. I don't care about your money, Ji-hoon." "Yes, you do. You care very much, because without it, without the Yoon name, you're nothing in Seoul. Your little tech firm, your hobby, will collapse within 6 months once we make sure no one wants to work with Yoon Ji-hoon's failed, bitter ex-wife." His smile was truly vicious. "Mother has already made calls. Good luck rebuilding your pathetic career." Evelyn didn't respond with words. She simply held his gaze, her dark eyes blazing with a nascent, cold promise, before turning on her heel and walking out. Her head was held high, her movement a slow, deliberate rebuke, even as her heart was being painfully reformed from soft tissue into cold, sharp shrapnel. That night, in a sleek, minimalist hotel room paid for with one of her last independent credit cards, Evelyn made a defining decision. She wasn't going to just walk away, annihilated by Kim Ji-suk's schemes. She wasn't going to let Ji-hoon and Eunju destroy her and inherit her life. She was going to destroy them first. But to fight the Yoon Group, the sheer scale of their power in the global tech space, she needed help. She needed the ultimate counterpower, and she knew exactly where to find it. Yoon Tae-hyun. Yoon Ji-hoon's father, the true architect and silent patriarch of the entire Yoon Empire. The story was whispered in every major business circle in Seoul. Yoon Tae-hyun and Kim Ji-suk hadn't shared a life, let alone a bedroom, in over 20 years. They rarely spoke in public. Kim Ji-suk ran the social side of the dynasty with an iron, manicured fist, but Yoon Tae-hyun, the man who built the empire from scratch, controlled every cent of the money and the corporate direction. They were locked in a decades-long Cold War, a brutal, public ceasefire. If anyone hated Kim Ji-suk as fiercely as Evelyn now did, it was Yoon Tae-hyun. Evelyn spent 2 weeks immersed in research. She liquidated every personal, non-traceable asset she had, ensuring she had a strong financial cushion. She hired the best, most discreet divorce attorney in the city and then arranged a meeting with the patriarch himself. It wasn't easy. Yoon Tae-hyun was notoriously private, rarely granting audiences outside of his inner circle. But Evelyn had an undeniable ace, a piece of leverage only she possessed. Among her numerous wedding gifts had been an antique Check-Godo screen, a family heirloom that Julian had insisted was the only thing of true value in the Yoon collection. Kim Ji-suk had given it to Evelyn with palpable contempt, assuming the foreign woman wouldn't appreciate its delicate, historical value. Evelyn used it as her calling card. She contacted Yoon Tae-hyun's private secretary with a simple, potent message. She wished to return a specific family heirloom personally and discuss a matter of mutual interest regarding the future and stability of the Yoon group, specifically concerning Kim Ji-suk. 3 days later, she received a response. Yoon Tae-hyun would see her at his private office downtown, a location known only to a select few. The office was located in a sleek, modern building far removed from the main Yoon corporate headquarters, an intentional detachment. When Evelyn was ushered into the space, she found herself in a minimalist sanctuary dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire sprawl of Seoul. Yoon Tae-hyun stood by the windows. He was a tall man, commanding even in repose, with wavy, shoulder-length, dark hair that brushed his color. He was undeniably handsome, his features sharp, refined, and his body hinting at a disciplined, muscular build beneath the exquisitely tailored suit. He possessed a kind of raw, kinetic presence that instantly reminded Evelyn why he hadn't just built a tech empire but fundamentally shifted the economic landscape of the nation. He turned as she entered, and Evelyn was immediately struck by his eyes. They were dark, intelligent, and held a penetrating intensity that seemed to strip away all pretense. They were utterly, thankfully unlike the cold cruelty that characterized Kim Ji-suk's gaze. "Mrs. Yoon," he said, his voice measured, deep, and resonant. It carried a slight rasp that sent an immediate, unexpected shiver down Evelyn's spine. "Or should I say, soon-to-be ex-Mrs. Yoon." "You've heard," Evelyn stated, her eyes locking onto his. The physical proximity in the silent room was already charged. She felt the heat emanating from him, a raw energy that instantly connected with the sensual awareness of her own body. "I hear everything that concerns my family and my company," Yoon Tae-hyun replied. He gestured to a chair, but neither of them moved toward the seating arrangement. "Please. You mentioned returning something of mine." Evelyn walked slowly to the massive, dark wood desk, every step feeling deliberate, conscious of the subtle sway of her hips under his scrutiny. She placed the antique screen carefully on the polished surface. "Your family's Check-Godo. Kim Ji-suk gave it to me as a wedding gift. I thought you might want it back." Yoon Tae-hyun walked over, his movement fluid, predator-like. He picked up the screen, his large hand brushing the delicate frame, his expression softening slightly. "This was a gift from my father. I assumed Ji-suk had sold it years ago." He looked at Evelyn with a sudden, new, intense interest that felt like an intimate touch. His eyes traveled down the length of her body, lingering for a fraction of a second on her curves, before returning to her face. "You researched its value?" "Its history." "I researched everything, Mr. Yoon." Tae-hyun, he corrected, his voice dropping an octave, becoming more intimate. "Given that we're technically family, however briefly." He set the screen down carefully, his gaze capturing hers. The air between them was thick, electric. It was more than respect, it was an undeniable, immediate physical curiosity, a sensual spark igniting between two powerful people suddenly thrust into a confined space. "You didn't come here just to return this," he observed, his eyes holding a direct, challenging promise. "You said you had a matter of mutual interest regarding my wife. My ex-wife, if I have anything to say about it." Evelyn leaned into the space between them, pushing the boundaries of their professional interaction. "I know what she did, what she's been doing. And I think you might want to know too." Yoon Tae-hyun's expression remained outwardly impassive, but something deep, dark, and dangerous flickered in his eyes, responding to the sensual, dangerous proposition in her tone. "I'm listening, Evelyn." Evelyn told him everything. The calculated pressure campaign to make her abandon her tech career. Yoon Ji-hoon's appalling violence and casual misogyny. The affair with Go Eun-ju. But most importantly, she presented the hard evidence, the screenshots of the messages that proved Kim Ji-suk had orchestrated the entire, vicious scheme, treating Evelyn's life as a mere corporate inconvenience. When she finished, the The silence in the room stretched, charged with the shared, volatile information. Finally, Yoon Taehyun exhaled slowly, the sound almost a controlled hiss. I'm not surprised. Kim Ji-suk's capacity for cruelty is well documented, at least to those of us unfortunate enough to be trapped in her orbit. You stayed married to her, Evelyn pointed out, her tone a silent challenge. Yoon Taehyun's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. A catastrophic mistake I've regretted for 27 years. He stood, walking back to the windows, his broad shoulders squared against the panoramic view of Seoul. Would you like to know how Kim Ji-suk and I met, Evelyn? Yes, she said, her voice soft, intrigued. I was 30, aggressively building the Yoon Group. Working 18-hour days, fueled by ambition. He paused, his gaze fixed on the city below. Ji-suk was a secretary in my law firm. Beautiful, manipulative, utterly focused on advancement. He turned, finally meeting her gaze, the intensity of his eyes piercing her. We had an affair. One night. I was crystal clear it was a mistake, that I wasn't interested in anything serious or lasting. 2 months later, she told me she was pregnant. Evelyn's breath hitched in her throat, a sudden wave of empathy washing over her. I did the only honorable thing I knew how to do, Yoon Taehyun continued, his tone thick with regret and resentment. I married her, gave the child my name, and planned to build a family. 3 months into the marriage, she miscarried. He paused, then his eyes narrowed, the dark intensity sharpening to pure steel. Or so she said. Years later, my private investigators found the medical records. She was never pregnant. She drugged me that night to ensure I'd sleep with her, then faked the test results. By the time I discovered the brutal truth, we'd been married for 3 years, and I'd already signed over significant non-corporate assets to her in various legal agreements. Why didn't you divorce her then? Evelyn asked, moving to stand closer to him, the edge of her hip almost brushing his arm. The energy between them flared instantly. Because she had leverage, Yoon Taehyun said simply, his voice low and dangerous. He glanced down, his eyes momentarily locking onto the curve of her body before snapping back to her face. Business deals she threatened to unravel, relationships she could poison within the political and corporate sphere. I realized the only way to neutralize her was to keep her close, maintain the facade, and ensure I maintained absolute control of the company. We've existed in this Cold War ever since. She plays the queen of society. I build the actual empire. We don't speak unless absolutely necessary. He ran a hand over his wavy hair, the gesture one of deeply ingrained fatigue. And Yoon Ji-hoon? We adopted him when he was 2, after the supposed miscarriage. Ji-suk wanted an heir she could mold. I desperately wanted a son. His expression hardened into pure granite. She got what she wanted. Ji-hoon is entirely her creature, ambitious, cruel, and without any genuine talent for the tech world. Below them, the sprawling, complex, neon-lit landscape of Seoul stretched in all directions. Evelyn turned fully toward him, the gap between their bodies dangerously small. What if we could end this? She asked quietly, her breath soft against his collar. The Cold War. Kim Ji-suk's control. All of it. Yoon Taehyun looked down at her, the air crackling with an almost unbearable tension. His eyes were dark pools, reflective of the city lights and the intense desire that was rapidly eclipsing their need for revenge. What did you have in mind? I have the resources, the power. You have the motivation, the intellect, and the proof. Together, we could expose her. Really expose her. Everything she's done, every scheme, every lie. Evelyn met his gaze, the fury of betrayal lending her eyes a compelling, intense fire. Ji-suk took everything from me, my future, my peace, my self-respect. Let me help you take everything from her. A slow, profoundly masculine smile spread across Yoon Taehyun's handsome face. It was the first genuine expression she had seen from him, and it was utterly devastating in its magnetism. I like the way you think, Evelyn Adewale. His voice was a seductive promise. What do you need? Access to your legal team, your investigators, and a guarantee that when this is over, I'm protected. Completely. Done, Yoon Taehyun said, his hand extending across the small space, his fingers long, firm, and warm. His skin grazed her wrist before settling on her palm. The simple touch felt like an electrical current, shocking both of them with its immediate, intense familiarity. It was not a formal handshake, it was an acknowledgement of a shared, dangerous, and sexually charged pact. Welcome to the war. Evelyn felt a deep surge of power, a primal satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the man whose hand now enveloped hers. If this dark story of betrayal, revenge, and the electric tension between these two powerful individuals has you hooked, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next dramatic escalation. Like and comment below with your predictions for Kim Ji-suk's downfall. Trust us, it's going to get intense. Over the next 3 months, Evelyn and Yoon Tae-hyun worked in absolute secret. Their collaboration was conducted primarily in his minimalist, isolated office, the glass walls of which seemed to hold and intensify the escalating, unspoken sexual chemistry between them. Yoon Tae-hyun's investigators were thorough, discreet, and ruthless. What they uncovered was even worse than Evelyn had initially imagined. Kim Ji-suk hadn't just faked a pregnancy to trap her husband. Over the decades, she'd been systematically embezzling astronomical sums from various Yoon Group charitable foundations. Millions of dollars had been funneled through complex, layered shell corporations and offshore accounts. She'd also carried on multiple, discreet affairs, including a lengthy one with a high-level board member, which violated numerous corporate ethics policies and compromised critical trade secrets. But the ultimate smoking gun was her scheme with Go Eun-ju. Yoon Tae-hyun's team found irrefutable, time-stamped emails proving Ji-suk had been planning to replace Evelyn for over a year. She had researched the prenuptial agreement's loopholes, convinced her son that his wife was defective and undeserving of the Yoon legacy, and reached out to the desperate Go Eun-ju, offering her everything Evelyn had in exchange for producing a grandchild and an heir. It was cold, calculated, and now absolutely devastating evidence, compiled into a comprehensive, legally sound dossier. This is enough to destroy her entire social and corporate standing, Yoon Tae-hyun said one evening, his voice heavy with satisfaction. They were standing side by side, poring over the final legal documents. Their shoulders were almost touching, and Evelyn could feel the warmth of his body, the faint, masculine scent of his cologne and raw power. The proximity was deliberate now, a constant testing of the invisible boundaries they had set up. We can present this to the board, force her off the board immediately, and freeze her assets before she can move anything else. Not yet, Evelyn said, her voice a low murmur. She had been thinking about this moment for weeks, conceptualizing the perfect execution. She turned slightly, and the movement caused her hip to brush against his thigh. The contact was brief, but the resulting surge of heat in the small space was profound, almost visible. Yoon Tae-hyun's eyes darkened, locking onto hers, the intellectual discussion momentarily dissolving into raw, shared awareness. We need the perfect moment, Tae-hyun. Maximum impact. His voice was a low growl. And what do you have in mind for the moment of maximum impact, Miss Evelyn? The use of the formal honorific with her name, combined with the intense heat in his eyes, was overwhelmingly sensual. Evelyn swallowed, trying to force her mind back to the strategy. The quarterly board meeting next month. It's mandatory attendance for all board members, major shareholders, and their families. Everyone will be there. Ji-hoon, Eun-ju, Ji-suk. She paused, savoring the vision. When we move, I want the entire world to witness her fall from the highest tower. Yoon Tae-hyun studied her for a long, charged moment, his gaze seeming to strip away her clothing and her resolve. You've changed, Evelyn. You're not the same woman who walked into this office 3 months ago, timidly returning an heirloom. That woman was naive, Evelyn murmured, leaning closer, her breath now fanning his ear. She believed in love and loyalty and playing by the rules. I'm not her anymore. Good, Yoon Tae-hyun said, his voice husky, his hand finally reaching out, his long fingers carefully tracing the line of her jaw, the delicate curve where her neck met her shoulder. The touch was slow, electric, and carried the weight of everything they hadn't said. Because what comes next requires strength and a certain kind of fire. Something fundamental had shifted between them during those intense months of clandestine work. Evelyn had expected an ally, a professional benefactor. What she hadn't expected was to find a man who genuinely saw her, who valued her mind, her unique skills, her drive, and who treated her as a true equal rather than an obligation. The shared sense of danger and the intellectual sparring had created an irresistible emotional bond that had now curdled into a palpable, volatile sexual tension. One evening, after they had finalized the entire legal and corporate presentation, Yoon Tae-hyun poured them both a glass of vintage soju, a gesture that had become a silent, intimate ritual. The scent of the alcohol mingled with the charged air. "I have a proposition for you, Evelyn," he said, his eyes dark, direct, and filled with a raw, calculated desire. "Another one?" Evelyn asked, accepting the heavy glass, their fingers brushing again, a familiar, agonizing flare of heat erupting between them. "We're going to destroy Kim Ji-suk financially and socially," Yoon Tae-hyun confirmed, not moving, allowing the space between them to fill with unspoken promises. "But I want to do more than that. I want to ensure she can never, ever recover. And I want to make sure Ji-hoon and Go Eun-ju understand exactly what they've lost and what they can never attain." "How?" Yoon Tae-hyun set down his glass, the sound sharp in the quiet room. He took a deliberate, slow step that closed the distance between them, standing so close that Evelyn could feel the heat radiating off his muscular chest. The air was heavy with anticipation, thick with the scent of soul and desire. His voice was a low, intense promise, directed only at her. "Marry me." Evelyn nearly dropped her glass. The alcohol tasted like fire, but the intensity of his gaze was hotter. "What?" "I'm serious," Yoon Tae-hyun insisted, his eyes never leaving hers, tracing the shock and confusion on her face. "Think about it strategically. I've wanted to divorce Ji-suk for years, but I needed absolute leverage. Now we have it. Once the board meeting happens and her crimes are exposed, I will file for divorce immediately. The scandal will be enormous, yes. But imagine the headlines if, at the very same time, I announce my engagement to you." Yoon Ji-hoon's ex-wife, Evelyn whispered, the sheer audacity of the plan beginning to dawn, fueling a dangerous, seductive excitement within her. "My son's ex-wife becomes my wife," Yoon Tae-hyun continued, his voice heavy with triumph and raw intention. His large hand moved, resting on the small of her back, the warm, firm pressure immediately igniting a deep, sensual ache in her lower body. The contact was purely sexual, the act of a man staking a claim. "You become the new Yoon matriarch. Ji-hoon and Eun-ju will have to watch as you take everything Ji-suk promised them. And Ji-suk will have to live with the knowledge that you, the foreign woman she dismissed as a temporary obligation, ultimately won." It was audacious. It was scandalous. And with his hand pressed against her spine, his eyes holding hers in a powerful, intimate connection, it felt absolutely, intoxicatingly perfect. "What's in it for you, Tae-hyun?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely a breath, her consciousness completely consumed by the heat of his touch and the promise in his eyes. Yoon Tae-hyun's expression softened, the intensity of his desire momentarily overriding the corporate strategist. He leaned in, his lips close to her ear, sending a delicious, agonizing shiver through her entire body. "Honestly? These past 3 months, working with you, feeling this," he trailed off, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "This is the most energized, the most alive I've felt in 20 years. You're brilliant, Evelyn. You're driven, creative, and you don't let anything stop you. I want a real partner. Not a Cold War." He pulled back slightly, his hand remaining firm on her back, his gaze now filled with a genuine, demanding tenderness. "This isn't about love, Evelyn. Not yet." "No," Evelyn agreed, her own heart hammering, her desire for him making her dizzy. "It's about partnership, respect, and mutual benefit." "But I think," Yoon Tae-hyun murmured, his head descending, his intention clear, his breath hot and ragged against her lips. "Given time and with this chemistry we share, it could become much, much more. If we both wanted it to." He didn't wait for her verbal answer. His lips captured hers, a contact that was not tender or careful, but immediate, demanding, and utterly consuming. It was the kiss of two people who had suppressed an intense, forbidden desire for 3 long months, now giving in to the overwhelming force of their mutual attraction. It was a promise of passion, a declaration of intent, and the sensual sealing of their dangerous contract. Evelyn responded instantly, her hand rising to his wavy, shoulder-length hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss, allowing the raw heat of their connection to burn away the last lingering pain of Ji-hoon's betrayal. She thought about Ji-hoon's cruelty, Kim Ji-suk's schemes, the respectable, sterile life she had lost. Then she thought about the future, the intoxicating power, the profound revenge, and the electric, undeniable desire for the man holding her. The chance to rebuild herself into something stronger, something untouchable, with a man who could match her intensity. Breaking the kiss, their foreheads touching, their breathing ragged, Evelyn looked into his dark, hungry eyes. Yes, she breathed, the word a promise, a surrender, and a challenge. Let's do it. Let's burn the old Yoon dynasty down and build our own. The quarterly board meeting was held exactly 1 month later in the main conference room of the Yoon Tower, a fortress of steel and glass in the heart of Seoul. Evelyn arrived early, taking her seat beside Yoon Tae-hyun at the head of the immense, polished table. She wore a tailored suit the color of black velvet, her long, curly hair coiled into an elegant, powerful mass, her confidence as sharp and effective as armor. The board members filed in, their surprise palpable at seeing Yoon Ji-hoon's estranged wife seated next to the Patriarch. Yoon Ji-hoon arrived with Go Eun-ju clinging tightly to his arm, her pregnancy now visibly advanced, her face pale with an anxious, nervous pride. When Ji-hoon saw Evelyn, his face went a sickly white. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, looking desperately at his father. "Sit down, Ji-hoon," Yoon Tae-hyun commanded, his voice cold, final. Kim Ji-suk arrived last, sweeping in like the queen she believed herself to be, draped in the Yoon family diamonds. When she saw Evelyn, her eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "This is a closed meeting, dear. Family and board members only." "Evelyn is here at my invitation," Yoon Tae-hyun stated, his voice a low, warning rumble. "Now sit down, Ji-suk. We have a lot to cover today." The meeting proceeded normally for the first 30 minutes. Financial reports, project updates, the usual dry corporate business. The tension was a living entity in the room, suffocating every professional interaction. Then Yoon Tae-hyun nodded to Evelyn. She stood, her movement fluid, graceful, and utterly commanding, opening her laptop and connecting it to the main boardroom screen. "Before we adjourn," Evelyn said, her alto voice clear and resonant, slicing through the tension. "I have some critical information the board needs to review regarding systemic improprieties and gross financial mismanagement in the Yoon charitable foundations." Kim Ji-suk's face went utterly, terrifyingly still, her grip tightening on the table edge. "This is hardly the time for charity reports." "It's exactly the time," Yoon Tae-hyun interjected, his voice quiet but final. "Continue, Evelyn." What followed was a masterclass in corporate and social destruction. Evelyn presented every piece of evidence they had gathered, the embezzlement, detailed with financial records and paper trails, the layered corporate fraud, the affairs complete with hotel receipts and damning messages. Then, she laid out the scheme to replace her, the cruel plot detailed in Kim Ji-suk's own cold, unfeeling emails. The board members were silent, their faces a mixture of horror, fascination, and recognition of the power shift. Yoon Ji-hoon looked like he might vomit. Go Eun-ju had gone a shocking, terrified shade of gray. But Kim Ji-suk's mask never once cracked. She sat frozen, her hands clasped on the table, watching silently as her entire life, her legacy of control, was dismantled piece by piece. When Evelyn finished, Yoon Tae-hyun stood, his imposing frame dominating the space. "Given this irrefutable evidence, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove Kim Ji-suk from the board, freeze all her access to company assets, and initiate a full, comprehensive internal investigation." The vote was unanimous, the board members desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Furthermore, Yoon Taehyun continued, his eyes now fixed on his soon-to-be ex-wife. I am filing for divorce, effective immediately. Ji-suk, you will be escorted from this building by security personnel, and you will have no further access to any Yoon Group properties or resources. Kim Ji-suk finally moved. She stood slowly, her face a mask of incandescent, pure fury. You think you've won? She hissed at Evelyn, her voice a low, terrifying vibration. You think you can destroy me, you opportunistic foreigner? I don't think, Ji-suk, Evelyn said calmly, her voice entirely devoid of fear. I know. You destroyed yourself. Every scheme, every lie, every act of cruelty, that was all your own doing. You're nothing but a cheap social climber. Ji-suk spat, her voice rising. Ain't nobody who got lucky. You'll never be a true Yoon. Actually, Yoon Taehyun said, moving to stand immediately beside Evelyn, his strong arm wrapping possessively around her waist. The touch was a sensual reminder of their new pact, a power move and an intimate claim. That's not quite accurate. He looked at the stunned board members, his gaze sweeping over them like a corporate guillotine. I'd like to inform the board that Evelyn Adewale has agreed to marry me. The wedding will take place in 3 months. The room erupted into pandemonium. Board members shouted questions, their shock overwhelming. Yoon Ji-hoon lurched to his feet, his chair crashing backward, a sound of absolute destruction. Go Eun-ju burst into hysterical tears. But through it all, Evelyn stood tall, the strength of Yoon Taehyun's hand steady and warm against her lower back, his entire body radiating a powerful, protective energy that matched the triumphant fire in her eyes. She was the victor. The wedding 3 months later was a meticulously calculated spectacle of power, revenge, and burgeoning desire. Evelyn and Yoon Taehyun invited everyone, all the society families, every influential business partner, the entire Yoon board. They wanted witnesses to the dramatic new order they were imposing on Seoul's elite. The ceremony itself was held in a sleek, innovative tech museum Evelyn had helped design early in her career, a symbolic gesture of her professional triumph. She wore a stunning white gown that accentuated her graceful, curvy figure and a diamond necklace that had once belonged to Yoon Taehyun's grandmother, a symbol of true, legitimate matriarchal power. But the reception was where the true, satisfying revenge played out. As tradition dictated in the ancient customs of the Yoon family, a tradition Kim Ji-suk herself had ruthlessly enforced, the children of the groom were expected to serve tea to the new bride, acknowledging her position as the new matriarch. Now, in front of nearly 500 guests, Yoon Ji-hoon was called forward. Beside him, the terrified Go Eun-ju was pushed forward as well, her pregnancy in its final, massive trimester. They knelt before Evelyn and Yoon Taehyun, holding the ceremonial tea set. Ji-hoon's hands shook violently as he poured the tea. Welcome, stepmother, he forced out, his voice a barely audible, humiliating whisper. Evelyn accepted the cup gracefully, her gaze holding his, calm and implacable. Thank you, Ji-hoon. She then turned to Go Eun-ju, her expression one of faux concern. And you must be so uncomfortable in your condition, Eun-ju. Carrying the future of the Yoon name, or at least a name you hope to attach to the Yoon legacy. I do hope the baby is healthy. Go Eun-ju's eyes filled with hot tears of fury and shame as she poured her cup. Thank you, Mrs. Yoon, she whispered, the new title a venomous knife in her gut. The room was utterly silent, everyone riveted, witnessing this extraordinary, satisfying reversal of fortune. Yoon Taehyun leaned over, his voice a low, intimate murmur against Evelyn's ear. You're magnificent. Truly magnificent. The shared moment was charged, a secret acknowledgement of the deep sensual bond their shared victory had created. She smiled, sipping her tea, her gaze resting on him, filled with a raw, demanding appreciation. We're just getting started, Taehyun. The evening was perfect, right up until the climactic, devastating moment. The main doors of the reception hall burst open, and Kim Ji-suk stormed in. She was visibly thinner, her expensive clothes slightly rumpled, her hair not quite as perfectly styled as before. The immediate, swift divorce and the freezing of her assets had stripped her of nearly everything, and the raw, unhinged look in her eyes spoke of desperation and madness. You think you've won? She shrieked, her voice cutting through the elegant music, drawing every eye in the room. You think you can steal my life and get away with it, you conniving snake? Security personnel immediately moved toward her, but Yoon Tae-hyun held up a commanding hand, stopping them. Let her speak, he said calmly, his jaw rigid, protecting Evelyn with his body. Kim Ji-suk advanced on Evelyn, her face a mask of contorted, absolute rage. You are nothing but a cheap, calculating social climber. You seduced my husband, stole my son's position, destroyed my reputation. I did nothing to you, Ji-suk, Evelyn stated, standing to face her, her spine rigid. You destroyed yourself. Every scheme, every lie, every act of cruelty, that was all your own doing. I simply chose not to lie down and die for you. I should have destroyed you when I had the chance. Ji-suk hissed. She was close now. Too close. And there was something dangerously wild, unthinking in her eyes. Ji-suk, Yoon Tae-hyun warned, taking a protective step forward. You need to leave, now. No. Ji-suk's voice rose to a shriek. I won't let her have this. I won't let her win. She lunged forward, her hands reaching out, clawing, specifically aiming for Evelyn's face and neck. They were at the top of the sweeping, grand marble staircase that led down to the main hall. Evelyn stepped back instinctively, startled, but Kim Ji-suk was beyond reason, beyond caution. Her hands connected violently with Evelyn's shoulders, pushing hard, fueled by years of pent-up hatred. Evelyn felt herself falling backward. The entire world tilted and spun into a dizzying kaleidoscope of white marble, crystal chandeliers, and screaming faces. She heard Yoon Tae-hyun roar her name, a raw, agonized sound. Then she was tumbling, the hard, cold marble steps rushing up to meet her, a devastating, sharp pain exploding through her body with each brutal impact. She came to rest at the very bottom of the staircase, her beautiful white gown torn, stained with a horrifying, spreading crimson. The pain was immediate, sharp, and absolute. Through the haze of shock and searing agony, she heard the screaming, the terrified murmurs of the guests. Yoon Tae-hyun's voice was closer now, frantic, his muscular arms gently cradling her head, his face a mask of sheer terror. Call an ambulance. Now, he was shouting. Evelyn tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The intense, spreading warmth centered agonizingly low in her abdomen felt horribly, chillingly familiar. The baby, she managed to whisper, the words barely audible against the chaos. She hadn't told anyone yet. She had only confirmed it herself 2 weeks ago, a private moment of quiet joy and profound hope. She had planned to tell Yoon Tae-hyun tonight, after the reception, a surprise that would transform their strategic partnership into something real, something growing, something bound by life itself. Yoon Tae-hyun's face went instantly, devastatingly white. You're pregnant. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the sweat of the pain. I think she didn't need to finish the sentence. The paramedics arrived almost immediately, swarming the scene. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, Evelyn caught a final glimpse of Kim Ji-suk, being dragged away by security and police, still screaming, still raging against the injustice of her fall. The hospital confirmed the terrible reality Evelyn already knew in her heart. She had miscarried. The baby, barely 8 weeks along, was gone, violently ripped from her. Yoon Tae-hyun never left her side. He held her hand through the invasive procedures, the medications, and the terrible, echoing emptiness that settled over her body and soul. When she finally cried, the deep, wrenching sobs of profound loss, he simply held her close, his strong body a steady anchor, and let her grieve the child they had not yet known. I'm so sorry, Tae-hyun, she whispered into his suit jacket. I wanted to tell you. I thought it could be real. That we could be a real family, truly. We will be, Yoon Tae-hyun said fiercely, his hand stroking her curls. This devastating loss changes nothing between us, Evelyn. We have time and we have each other. We are a family already. We will try again. We will succeed. He looked up, his face hardening into the granite resolve of a man who has lost everything and is now focused solely on retribution. Kim Ji-suk is being charged with assault with grievous bodily harm. Given her history of embezzlement, and now this very public, deliberate attack, the prosecutors are pushing for the maximum sentence. She is looking at 15 years minimum. Evelyn should have felt satisfaction, the sweet, intoxicating triumph of revenge. Instead, she just felt tired, empty, and profoundly sad. But as the days passed and her body recovered, something cold and hard solidified inside her. She had lost a child, her first, the promise of a future, because of Kim Ji-suk's senseless, decades-long hatred. That was a wound that would never fully heal. But she would not let it break her. She was a survivor, a woman forged in fire, and she would make absolutely certain that Kim Ji-suk's punishment perfectly fit her crimes. The trial was swift, brutal, and utterly public, chronicled in lurid detail across every Seoul media outlet. With hundreds of high-society witnesses to the assault, Kim Ji-suk's high-priced lawyers could mount no effective defense. She was sentenced to 18 years in a maximum security prison for assault causing grievous bodily harm, embezzlement, and corporate fraud. The former matriarch of the Yoon Group was removed from society entirely, her legacy in ashes. Yoon Ji-hoon and Go Eun-ju's karma came more slowly, but with an equally devastating finality. When Go Eun-ju gave birth, Yoon Ji-hoon immediately demanded a paternity test. His growing paranoia about his wife's faithfulness, a paranoia rooted in his mother's teachings and his own insecurity, had been eating at him for months. The results destroyed what little remained of his life. The baby was not his. Further, meticulous testing conducted by Yoon Tae-hyun's private doctors revealed the final, humiliating truth Yoon Ji-hoon had been running from all along. He was sterile. He had been since a childhood illness. He could never father children. The entire reason for his marriage to Evelyn, his need for an heir, his cruelty, had been based on a biological lie. Go Eun-ju, desperate and greedy, had been sleeping with someone else all along, using Ji-hoon solely for his money, status, and his mother's promise, all while carrying another man's child. The divorce was vicious, protracted, and brutally public. Ji-hoon, following in his mother's path, went after Go Eun-ju with everything he had, stripping her of her assets. She was left with absolutely nothing, not even custody of the baby, who was claimed by his biological father, a mid-level manager in a rival tech firm whom Eun-ju had foolishly thought she could discard. Desperate and broke, Go Eun-ju tried one last, foolish scheme. She attempted to forge Yoon Group corporate bonds and sell them overseas for immediate cash. Yoon Tae-hyun's security and legal team, already primed for any counterattack, caught her within days. She was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 8 years in prison for federal fraud. As for Yoon Ji-hoon, Yoon Tae-hyun made good on his strategic promise. He transferred his son to a failing, hemorrhaging international branch of the Yoon Group in a remote region of Southeast Asia, a division mired in complex local legal troubles. It was technically a promotion to CEO, but everyone in the global tech world knew it was a cruel, public exile. Ji-hoon's life collapsed quickly without his mother's protection or his father's benevolent influence. His incompetence became blindingly obvious. The branch failed disastrously within a year. Ji-hoon was sued by local partners, lost the last of his personal wealth, and eventually disappeared into corporate obscurity. The last reports placed him working as a forgotten, mid-level manager at a competitor's regional office, a mighty scion utterly, finally fallen. 5 years later, Evelyn Adewale Yoon stood in her architectural tech firm's new global headquarters, a soaring, custom-designed glass and steel building of her own creation in the heart of Seoul. She had launched the firm 2 years after the trial, with Yoon Tae-hyun's immense financial backing, but with her own undeniable vision, merging African design principles with Korean smart tech. It had quickly become one of the most sought-after firms in the world, known for its innovative, sustainable design, uncompromising quality, and the sheer genius of its founder. She heard footsteps behind her and turned, a deep, genuine smile illuminating her face. Yoon Taehyun entered the space, looking impossibly handsome, his wavy, shoulder-length hair slightly mussed, carrying a little girl balanced easily on his hip. Yoon Ari was 3 now, with her mother's dark, soulful eyes, her long, beautiful curls, and her father's sharp, playful intelligence. She was the perfect culmination of their love, conceived a year after Evelyn's recovery. "Yama," Ari cried, reaching for Evelyn. Evelyn took her daughter, kissing her soft, giggling cheek. "How was the park, my love?" "We fed the ducks, and then we had to debate the optimal network topology for a duck palace," Yoon Taehyun said, his eyes filled with a warm, possessive adoration as he looked at his wife and daughter. Evelyn laughed, the sound rich and free. She looked at her family, her company, her incredible life. It looked nothing like the restrictive, cold existence she had imagined 10 years ago when she had first married Yoon Ji-hoon. That naive young woman who had believed in predictable fairy tales and sterile happy endings with the wrong, cruel man. This was immeasurably better. This was real. Built on mutual respect, intellectual partnership, shared ambition, and a deep, genuine, all-consuming love that had grown slowly, steadily, evolving from strategic alliance and intense, powerful sexual chemistry into an unbreakable, soulful bond. "What are you thinking, my beautiful wife?" Yoon Taehyun asked softly, his hand settling comfortably on the curve of her hip. "I'm thinking Kim Ji-suk was right about one thing," Evelyn said, her gaze fixed on her husband. "I was never going to be a true Yoon, not the way she defined it." She smiled, her eyes radiating power and sensual contentment. "I'm something so much better. I'm the woman who rebuilt the Yoon legacy into something worth having. I'm the true foundation." Yoon Taehyun pulled her closer, his lips seeking hers for a soft, meaningful kiss, Ari giggling between them. "You are the best decision I ever made, Evelyn. And I thank God every day that Ji-hoon was stupid and cruel enough to let you go." In the end, the Yoon legacy wasn't about cold manipulation, loveless marriages, or scheming for empty power. It became about innovation, integrity, true partnership, and building something that genuinely mattered, both in the tech world and within their home. Evelyn Adewale Yoon had won, not by becoming like Kim Ji-suk, but by becoming everything Kim Ji-suk was too shallow and heartless to ever be. And that was the sweetest, most profound revenge of all. If this story of betrayal, revenge, triumph, and the intense, passionate love that Evelyn and Yoon Taehyun built resonated with your soul, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more compelling stories that push the boundaries of drama and desire. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought about Evelyn's final move against Eunju and Ji-hoon, and what you think made Yoon Taehyun irresistible. We read every comment, and we love hearing your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.